Good afternoon, and welcome back to the scriptorium here at the University Club. It's so nice to see all of you. My name is Vanessa Gomez-Brake. I serve as the Associate Dean of Religious and Spiritual Life. My pronouns are she, her, sha. And what matters to me and why? Here we are yet again. This is our final of the series for fall. And yeah, it's been delightful spending the last few months with all of you exploring what matters, from our recently retired Associate Dean Jim Berklow back in September to Dean Pedro Noguera last month. And of course, we have Emily Sandivol with us this afternoon. So as it is November, I wanted to wish you all a happy Native American Heritage Month. This is a time to recognize the rich heritage, achievements, and contributions of Native Americans and their rich history on this land. The USC campus sits on the ancestral land of the Tongva people, the original peoples of LA, and along with the Tongva, we also can recognize the Chumash, the Tataviam, the Quiche, the Serrano, the Janueno, and the Lusueno people for the land that USC also occupies around Southern California. During this month, I highly recommend you visit our neighbors at the Natural History Museum, where they currently have an exhibit called Becoming Los Angeles, and it explores how people, place, and possibility helped create the city of angels. And of course, today also marks the end of Dia de los Muertos, or the Day of the Dead as we know it, a holy day celebrated by many folks and represents the reuniting of the living with the dead. Last week at the URC, we had fun watching Coco in our fishbowl, and we even took time to create altars or ofrendas with students, and we just enjoyed each other's company as we honored our loved ones. If anyone wants to join our Interfaith Council, actually our president of our Interfaith Council is here in the room. He's going to be leading a sojourn to Grand Park tonight. As you, if you've ever been down there at night, you know that during the season there are hundreds of altars set up in Grand Park, and so several students will be leaving from the University Religious Center to hop in our free lifts to downtown, and they're going to take a tour of all those beautiful sites. So yes, the ride is paid for, so please join us, 7 p.m. at the URC. As for our event today, this speaker series represents a creative solution to an important problem in our university setting. It's that separation of the intellectual life from the personal and the spiritual. What Matters to Me and Why offers the Trojan family an opportunity to hear from USC faculty and administrators in a different way. Rather than lecturing on their area of expertise or research, we invite them to share their lives with us, their journeys with us, so we may come to know them better. So once a month during this Wednesday lunch hour, we get to listen in as they reflect on their values, their beliefs, and their motivations that have shaped their lives up till now. So if you would like to nominate a member of the USC community to speak at a future event, please visit our website, orsl.usc.edu. And additionally on there, you can view recordings of many of our past speakers, which is quite a joy to listen in on. All right, that's it for me. Please sit back, relax, and even grab some more food. We've got plenty over there. And as you listen in today, prepare to ask a question during our Q&A period, which we'll reserve the last 10 minutes of this hour for. So to introduce today's speaker, we have a colleague that many of us know, Jonathan Wang of the Office of the Executive Vice Provost. He will offer a formal introduction for today's speaker, so please join me in welcoming Jonathan to the stage.
Hi, everyone. I noticed that it is sunny out now, so I thank Emily for that, for being here and letting us enjoy the sun after the rain. I'm so honored to introduce my friend and colleague, Dr. Emily Sandivol, who is currently Associate Vice Provost for Student Affairs. Her portfolio at the Student Affairs includes campus activities, fraternity and sorority leadership development, hazing prevention programs, residential education, Office of International Services, and the Trojan Marching Band. Most importantly, she's an amazing person. She brings so much great energy and joy, and is just genuine beyond belief, enabling to connect with others and care for others as well. Beyond being an amazing person, she's an amazing colleague, friend, sister, daughter, partner, and mom, who has the ability to seemingly manage it all with the poise and confidence that few others have. Emily was a resident director at Semester at Sea, where she traveled with students to 11 different countries and 14 different cities on a cruise ship. She was also a feature presenter at Comic-Con, where she speaks on building community through geek culture. It was through her that I first learned the difference between what a geek and a nerd was. Her research expanded to her passions of geek culture and students. I admire her drive to expand on a topic of student identity that often is overlooked or underappreciated. For when we first grew up, we were sometimes made ashamed of for being a geek. But now I think it's amazing that many students get to identify that way proudly. I also enjoy sometimes just walking into her office and just looking at the various trinkets and items she has on her walls and her shelves. That just is from various fandoms, and I think that's something that is amazing. And you get to strike up a conversation with her about one of those items, or just a thought or a topic about a niche topic as well. When I first met Emily, we were both assistant directors in Division of Student Affairs. And after we were both accepted to the EDD program here at Rossier, colleagues of ours told us you should all connect with each other and just kind of get to know one another. At least you have someone to talk to when you're in the space together. Little did we know that we would take every single class together and also join in on many weekends and weekdays together, just at our local coffee shop, studying, getting to know one another, and we're just preparing ourselves for our classes and our dissertation. What's most important is that I think her work through the program really helped me keep accountable to my goals as well. I've always appreciated her presence, and I look up to her as a role model in the field, someone who is caring, compassionate, and trying to change the world for our future, or for our students. Please join me in welcoming Emily to share what matters to her and why.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Jonathan, for the great introduction. And what he didn't say is we probably could have created a blog that cataloged all the coffee shops in Los Angeles who had the best coffee, the best food, and the best study environment. However, I'm very honored and thankful to ORSL for inviting me to do this. I'm very nervous. I will be very transparent with you because while I do a lot of talks and presentations for my day job, rarely do I have to talk about myself. So this is a little nerve-wracking. But what matters to me and why is such a deep question. I would say a lot of things matter to me in my life, but today I'm going to focus on, for me, it's believing in myself and in my abilities and what I'm capable of, and then being my authentic self in every space that I enter in. So to give you a little bit of a background, because many people who have known me my entire life from childhood would probably be surprised that I am standing here as an associate vice provost for student affairs. So I grew up in La Puente, California. I'm Chicana, part of a Mexican-American family, second generation born here. I am the youngest of three, so my brother and sister are 9 and 8 years older than me. If you knew little girl Emily, she was incredibly shy, did not like to talk to people, and incredibly conflict avoidant. So I had a core group of friends, and actually those core group of friends are still my friends. I've had friends since first grade that are still part of my life. But it took a lot for me to initially open up to people, and I just avoided the spotlight. That's probably why I'm a little nervous right now. But I think as my childhood progressed, you need to know I have a very strong mother who's been the backbone for the family. And how many of you are from Southern California? A few of you. So she'd grow up telling me the life is not fair, the fair is in Pomona, which you only know if you're from Southern California. and wake up and smell the enchilada sauce. For her, it was preparing me that things would not be handed to me. I'd have to work hard for it, and we'd have to persevere. And I would say the culmination of that perseverance was 2002. I graduated with my bachelor's degree. My mom, after 17 years, got her bachelor's degree. My brother got his PhD, and my sister was one language requirement away from her PhD. So we had La Familia Sandoval. So my brother and sister, they are Chicano studies professors at other universities. Remember, 9 and 8 years younger than them. So I grew up not wanting to be them, which is funny that we're all now in higher education. Even to the point where I am an 80s kid. I actually didn't love 80s music until I was an adult, because again, I didn't want to be like my brother and my sister. So I grew up with pretty bad asthma as a child, which prevented me from fully participating in PE at times. I was never hospitalized, but a lot of ER trips. So flash forward to high school, and I convinced my mom that I wanted to join the track and field team. And she said, okay, this is my first year. That spring banquet, I had friends come up and say, Mrs. Sandivol, we really want Emily to try out for cross country her sophomore year of high school. My mom's like, no, she's gonna pass out on the course. This isn't good. And some of the friends, which I will forever be grateful to, were considered slower members of the team. And they said, don't worry, Mrs. Sandoval, if she passes out, we'll pick her up and carry her to the finish line. So I convinced my mom, please let me try, because my freshman year I was a sprinter, was not built to be a sprinter. I was all of probably 90 pounds my freshman year of high school. So sophomore year I did it, and this is where believing in myself, I realized that I could do more than what other people thought I was capable of. My second race, no one saw me come in. So it was an invitational at Woodbridge High School in Orange County. I still remember this. And I walk up behind my coach and my mom, and they're freaking out. I was like, hey. And then they're like, you finished? It's like, yeah, and I hold up the trophy that said I was the 8th place in this meet of probably like 100 girls. So I made varsity my second race, proved everybody wrong. And that was the first time I realized the limitations that other people were placing on me, as long as I believed in myself and I worked hard. And I had my inhaler when I needed to. I still carry it. It's in my office. It's like American Express, never leave home without it. It's like a safety item for me, and I don't get asthma attacks anymore. But that was the first time when I realized that I could do something that people didn't think I was capable of. So believing in myself. The second part, and I will say there's probably 2 sad stories that'll pop up in the talk today, but I promise to end on a really high note. So at 17, so this was the summer before my senior year in high school, my really good friend was killed in a car accident. And at 17, it is a young age to deal with mortality of a peer. I hope none of you have had to deal with that, but those of us that have, it changes you. So I should have also said, as a child, I have a healthy dose of caution in life. Some people might call it fear, but this did not help. So at that point is the first time I realized that life was short and that anything could happen to anybody. So I decided the safe thing to do was not to get my driver's license, because who would want to drive? Stay close to home for college, because why would I want to leave home? I don't want to miss out on anything with my family. I don't want to miss out on anything with any of my friends. And that really held me back for a lot of my young adult life. And I would say it took me until I was 32 years old, 10 years ago. Yes, I'm 42, but 10 years ago. And my husband, who's sitting right here, also works in not student affairs anymore, academic affairs, sorry. But by the way, we met at USC in 2002 in our master's program, in the PASA program. So yay, Trojans. But he told me his dream was to go on semester at sea. And for those of you that don't know, Semester at Sea is a study abroad program where you could work as a staff member or a faculty member for the entire semester, sailing the world with college students. So being stuck on a small ship, not supposed to call it a boat, a small ship for the semester. And I thought he was crazy, because who packs up your entire life for 4 months, puts it in the storage, finds a cat sitter, which is actually a lot harder than you think, and goes. I was very, very fortunate that through this process, I thought, his dream, he'll get it, I'll wait at home. And he's like, we're not going to be apart for 4 months. What are you talking about? I'm like, well, you're crazy. I'm not going to go on a ship. And we ended up both applying. We both got the position. So I had a decision to make. And I would tell you again, my mom, always that little, like, not Jiminy Cricket, because she's not a conscious, like my conscious, but she's always putting little things in my head. Hey, Mom, we both got the job. What about the pirates? Mom, I need you to calm me down. I don't need you to exacerbate my nerves. Because again, healthy dose of fear. And I would say that took a lot for me to believe in myself and realize that it was okay to leave my comfort. It was okay to leave home, leave my family. I was terrified of leaving my abuelita, and she did have a heart attack while I was gone and survived. She actually just turned 98 years old this past Sunday. But I was terrified. And back in 2012, our students, the term FOMO had just come out. And I was like, that's what my problem has been since I was 17 years old. It was literally the fear of missing out. So I missed opportunities. I never studied abroad in undergrad. Didn't really travel or leave home because I was so afraid of what I would be missing. So I am very thankful to my husband for helping me believe in myself that we would be okay. And we did go on Semester at Sea. Another really good friend is also sitting in the audience. Mary teaches in Rossier, and she was also on the ship with us. And I would say, talking about believing in myself, I went cage diving with great white sharks in South Africa. Not many people could say that. But going back a little bit with the geek stuff, I never missed Shark Week. So to actually go to South Africa where they film Shark Week, I was over the moon, incredibly seasick. In smaller boats, like you go with on fishing boats, or in this case, shark exploration, horribly seasick, but very worth it. So that was a big part about starting to realize that I can challenge myself, go out of my comfort zone, and life would go on. Even if I'm not there, life would go on, and it would be okay. And I would say during this time, I was also very fortunate that Cal Poly San Luis Obispo held my position for me. So that was also a sign that I was meant to go. I was expecting after 4 years, they'd say, Emily, we're not going to give you a leave of absence. And I'd be great. I'll go on the ship, job search. They held my position, but we got back December 2012. By probably March 2013, I was job searching and got a position back here at USC, and that's when I came back to USC. So during this time, this goes back to the confidence in myself. Another death had greatly impacted me in 2014, and that was my cousin. So she ended up taking her life due to postpartum psychosis. So anytime anyone would ask me, hey, Emily, are you going to be a mom first? Rude. You don't ask people that. You don't ask people, are you going to be a mom, or why aren't you a mom yet? A lot of educational conversations in my 20s and 30s about that. But that gave me a new fear. So it's like, all right, and I do a lot of self-talk, sort of like, great, Sandivol, like, you left the country, you did fine, now this happened, you never thought about it, hell no, I'm never going to be a mom. Like, why would I even put myself in that position? And that really goes back, again, to believing in myself, but also my partner, that I would ultimately be okay. And I did have Isaac when I was 40 years old. He was a surprise. I didn't think that was going to happen. And I think the entire time of the pregnancy, add to the fact that I was pregnant during the pandemic, during COVID, because I found out I was pregnant at the end of May 2020. Again, healthy dose of fear, caution in my life. It was a very scary time of my life. Terrifying to go through the pregnancy, and very grateful that I had my partner with me, but it was also very lonely. So friends didn't see me, I wasn't around people, and it's like, okay, what happens if all of this compounds and postpartum depression or worse, psychosis forms? And he assured me, he's like, Em, I know you. And gosh, we just celebrated 12 years of marriage, 20 years together. Like, I have full faith in this man. But I needed to believe in myself. And there's still moments where I'm like, am I a good enough mom? You know, and I think that's normal, and we all probably question ourselves of, if we're parents, are we good enough? Are we doing enough? And the answer is yes, we are. We're doing enough for the little human that we are blessed with. But I go back to just believing in myself. And that goes to some of my professional journey. Again, little Emily, shy, conflict avoidant. Why I chose student affairs and most of my career was in housing and residential life, dealing with roommate conflicts and staff conflicts is beyond me. But I absolutely love and enjoyed that. But at USC, I've had 4 different positions since I've been here. And a lot of that is having the belief in myself, saying yes to opportunities. And I was never that person growing up. And I know my supervisor is in the room right now, but a few years ago, I remember sitting with her at a table, and we were going through major transitions in student affairs. When are we not? And she sat there and said, okay, I'm going to be in this position. What do you think we should do with the org structure? And I actually said, make me interim AVP. Who says that? Like, that was never who I was as a child. So I realized that as I've been living my life and talking myself up and reminding myself what I'm capable of and believing in myself, I was able to take more risks, more calculated risks. Also able to enjoy life a little more and not let fear hold me back. So I said I would end on a fun note. So this is where I talk about being your authentic self and why that's so important to me. And I will put the caveat that in my professional career, do I have boundaries? Heck yes. But pretty much who you see is who you get, no matter what space I'm entering, whether it is working with students, working with professional staff. I've taught a class for Ross here, so working with students, I try to be my authentic self, and I realize I'm very lucky to have the ability to do that. People have not broken my trust in my professional career at a deep level, so I'm very grateful for that. But I realize that being my authentic self goes back to why I'm in this field. And sense of belonging and connection is so important to me. And it's so valuable to me because that's how I got through adolescence. I am very much a geek, and Jonathan is right. When we were growing up, being a geek was not a cool thing. And being a geek who happened to identify as a girl and then a woman also was not commonplace. So a lot of my friends growing up were male identified because they were the ones that accepted my interests. So working at UC Riverside and Cal Poly Sloan here, so whether I was helping Highlanders or Mustangs or Trojans, helping people find those connection points is something that is so valuable to me. And while we do such great work at universities, in student affairs, through our cultural and identity-based centers, particularly with the connection points we make, I realized that the geek culture transcends multiple identities. And so yes, in 2011, one of my colleagues said, let's try to put a presentation into Comic-Con International. I mean, all the industry people do it, why don't we? It's just like a conference presentation. We do conference presentations all the time. We're like, yeah, go ahead. Like, they're gonna accept us. They did. And at the time, it was myself, a colleague from UC Santa Cruz, Fresno State, and Cal State San Marcos, and UC Merced at the time. And so we're all over California. And I remember the day that we found out we were accepted, because there was phone calls, screams, jumping up and down. Couldn't believe that we were accepted at Comic-Con. But that first presentation was all about using geek culture to find connection and build community. Since then, our group, that we call ourselves Geek Ed, bucket list item or goal, rather not bucket list, a major goal is carving out time in my life to actually create a brand around this and a website, and I have a book idea and everything. So eventually, I'll do that. But we've been asked to go back to Comic-Con every year since. We present as part of the education track now at the San Diego Public Library. We normally do Saturday or Sunday blocks for 4 hours. So we've expanded our network of peers across the United States. One time we tried K-12 as well, but we decided we should probably stay focused on higher ed. And we do presentations about being a career geek, how to find a job or find your niche, to mental health and geek identity, parasocial relationships. I think one of my favorite presentations is this is back when Wonder Woman and Black Panther first came out. It was titled University of Wakanda, Study Abroad Themyscira, both references to Wonder Woman and Black Panther, if you all don't know that. But we really spoke about the power of representation. And when you think about, and I could thank Marvel for making geek being cool. So thinking about, even in the past 10 years, how much has changed and the multiple identities that are now being represented in geek and sci-fi genre, it's amazing, because it wasn't like that when many of us were growing up. So being my authentic self means I get to geek out when people ask me about my pop figures at work. I get to geek out when people talk to me about my favorite television shows. Rings of Power was amazing. I enjoyed it. I have not read the actual Tolkien Lord of the Rings book, so people say I might think differently, but I love it. I will get in a deep argument if anyone tells me that there cannot be people of color in Middle-earth or in Star Wars or Game of Thrones. Well, that one's more problematic for me, that show. A lot of violence. But being my authentic self has allowed me to connect with not just students, but fellow colleagues, staff, and faculty members at every university I've been at. And some of my favorite anecdotes, I remember working at Cal Poly. And for those of you that don't realize, Cal Poly still is a big engineering school. And I had an RA, and we did Geek Week. So we did a week-long events of geek-themed programs, and an RA came up to me and said, I want to build a schematic for a live-action Angry Birds, if anyone remembers that app. And I said, do it, right? And most of the RAs that were working on this were male-identified, and they're just like, you know, Emily, you're cool. And you're a woman, and you're a nerd. I was like, geek, but yeah, I am a nerd, whatever. And because Jonathan mentioned it, I used to reference a very old Venn diagram that would say nerds were, let's see if I remember this. Nerds were highly interested in learning about things a little bit socially awkward, which I could be. Geeks went a little bit more into the obsessing about things, which I totally obsess about items, which is evident when you step into my office. I think the third was dweeb, which is an old 80s term, which is completely socially awkward. But I realized I love being myself. I don't know who else to be but me. So whatever space I'm in, you're going to get who I am. So I would say what matters to me is believing in myself and my abilities and being authentically me, because I don't know who else to be but me. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Emily. I have a microphone in my hand, which I invite you to raise your hand if you have a question for Emily. And perhaps I'll take, actually, you can have the first question. I will have the last question. How about that?
Hi, Emily.
Hi.
If you could have a conversation with little Emily, what would you say to her?
Don't let fear get in the way, and you're made for greater things than you realize you're capable of. So don't be afraid. Thank you.
Mine is kind of related, actually, because you talk so much about owning your geekdom. Is that a
Yes.
word?
Yeah.
Yes. I feel like growing up, yes, I've always had the glasses. I've always been intensely obsessed with particular things. And you sort of alluded to like what that was like growing up, but could you take us to that childhood? Like, who nurtured you in your geekdom?
Oh, yes.
And what were those sort of maybe cultural pieces that really, brought you into, I don't know, just from childhood
laid the
into who you
foundation
are
of my
now?
geekdom?
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's hear a bit about that.
That's my brother. So my brother, he was always a big Star Wars fan. And I would say even though he's 8 years older than me, I remember there was one time he was spending a Saturday with his friends in high school to do a Star Wars marathon. And he actually said, "Hey, Mom, can I bring Em with me?" Or Emmy, because that's what they call me. And what teenager wants to spend time with their kid sister with their teenage friends? But because they were also all geeks, so I was like, okay, like I trust you. So he would take me along to hang out with his friends. So for me, it was Star Wars. He never let me play with his Ewok village, and I could not play with his Atari. He would not let me touch his Atari. I had the original Nintendo, and I will say that I recycled in order to buy it. So while all my friends were getting it as gifts, I recycled and then bought it at a swap meet. I still have it. It still works. I'm very excited about that. I'm proud of that. It took a lot of hard work. So it was really my brother and also the original She-Ra and He-Man, although the new ones are so much better. But I didn't know any difference. And then I also grew up watching things that I thought were from my childhood, not realizing it was my brother's childhood. So if anyone remembers Land of the Lost, I loved that show, which also had like a sci-fi twist, and I thought that was totally something from the 80s. It's not. That was more 70s. So it's my brother. And I'll say, Vanessa, not only did I grow up with glasses, I got these when I was around 3.5 years old. I went to Catholic school from first grade through 12th grade, so school uniforms. And from first through eighth, one school, blue plaid uniforms. Why did my mother buy me blue frame glasses with a tint to match the uniform? I just put the bullseye on my back to be socially awkward. So I was this kid with the 80s with blue glasses for during the week and pink for the weekend. I don't like the color pink much anymore. Pink tinted glasses for the weekend because she thought that would be cool. Yeah.
I love it. You had the attire to match. Okay. Other questions from the audience?
Yeah, there's back there.
Thanks. That's my blind spot.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much for speaking. It was really cool to hear what you had to say. I wanted to know if you had like specific hurdles that you had to overcome being a woman and also being like Latina, and how you overcame those and how you like allowed that to like propel you forward instead of like keep you back.
Yeah, no, very good question. And I think in my career, there's been probably a few instances where I felt like the other, where I was in a space where there's people that did not look like me. I was in a space where there was predominantly white men. I've worked at PWIs. Actually, Cal Poly SLO at the time was 64% Caucasian when I got there. And I forgot to also mention as part of my identity, I feel like I should be bilingual. I'm not. I understand more Spanish than I speak. But I remember calling my family when I got to Cal Poly, and I was 28 years old at the time, saying, hey, I can't even find my spices to cook here. It's very different. SLO's much better now. But it was this like culture shock of like, where am I? Because UC Riverside was not like that at all. So I think how I built my confidence when entering spaces where I don't feel like I necessarily belong is a lot of self-talk saying, there's a reason I'm here. I was hired to do this job. I am capable. And then finding really awesome support networks to help talk me up. I am blessed to have a very strong supervisor who's helped me navigate those spaces and strong colleagues like Grant sitting back there. When I became a new director, I had people kind of self-talking me, okay, you got this, or this is what you need to consider. And to be honest, I probably played a role for part of my beginning when I was a little bit younger in my career, where I thought I needed to wear more makeup or I needed to wear heels because I'm only 5'3" and everyone around me was so much taller. I mean, my boots have heels, but you see me in flats now. I rarely wear heels, and since the pandemic, I don't even wear that much makeup anymore. So it's taken a lot of time, but it was surrounding myself with some good people that I trust who could help me in those spaces, and then reminding myself that I'm here for a reason. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Hi, thanks for your talk. How do you relate with your Catholicism these days? Has that been a strong factor in your life? Or?
Yeah. Unfortunately, not anymore. I say that I'm more spiritual, and I think that also goes along with being raised Mexican-American. There's aspects of my culture that align with Catholicism or Christianity, but it's more tied into spiritualness now, where I do believe in a higher power. I don't think one could be in a ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, seeing nothing for miles and the deepest blue water, and not think there has to be a higher power out there. What that higher power is, I don't know. And I will say that I'm very lucky, and hopefully he doesn't mind me saying this. My husband and I think are both more spiritual. He's Jewish. So when we got married under a huppah. He broke the glass, and the minute they said Mazel Tov and he broke the glass, the mariachi started playing. So we wrote our entire ceremony to make sure we were inclusive of our family's cultures and beliefs, but also staying true to who we are in terms of our faith now. But thank you for that.
Hello.
Hello.
So I resonate with you in like being socially awkward, like everyone looking at me right now, and I'm like, you got this.
Just look at me, look at me.
But then also speaking to like being a mom. So more like on the professional, personal aspect, thank you for like affirming something that I don't necessarily share with people, that like I get nervous about momming.
It's hard.
Are there tips that maybe you could give folks in the room who, many of them maybe a little, they're not there yet thinking about parenting and what that looks like, but how to create healthy boundaries between like their personal and professional lives, and like how to start that really early in their career?
Very good question, because I was probably really bad at this mahogany when I was a younger professional, working many, many hours. And unfortunately, sometimes residential life does that to you. But for me, having Isaac was probably the biggest balance equalizer in my life, where I realized that there is some guilt, parent guilt, of knowing that someone else is essentially raising my child 8 till 5:30, Monday through Friday. And that's something that I had to come to terms with. So that meant that once I became a parent, I needed to hold sacred those hours after 5. Because by the time I pick him up around 5:30, we maybe have 2.5 hours with him before bedtime. So saying no when you're able to, holding firm, and crises are separate. Crises happen, and you have to respond to that. But making sure that your day-to-day, like, you're never going to be caught up, folks. There will always be a to-do list. I don't think anyone could get caught up. So you need to really start to become okay as a younger professional to leave the office at 5, knowing that there's still things to do. As a type A personality, that was very hard for me to grasp with. I'm much more relaxed now than I was as a younger professional. And I would say not just learning when to say no, but how to say no. Because sometimes you're going to say no and it's going to get you in trouble. So there needs to be a way you say no and a nuance to it. So I would say start practicing those skills now for those of you that are students or younger professionals. And if you need help, that's a conversation to have with your supervisors. How do you navigate balance? How do you say no? How do you make sure you're protective of the time for your own wellness? So like I love my job. I love my job, but sometimes I count down until Friday just because I know I get more time with Isaac. You know, and it's tough. I'm at all the football games, so I know like this, it's a late game on Saturday. So I'm going to be missing bedtime, so that sucks, but it's not every time. So it's really making sure that you make the most of the time that you have with your children if you're a working professional, but trying your best to keep those boundaries. He doesn't know now, but they're going to get old enough, and your daughter's probably old enough where she sees it. Yeah.
Hi, Emily.
Hi.
So I'm sure that when you were accepted at Comic-Con in 2011, it was a great validation for your geek culture. But was there a moment prior to that when you realized that it was okay to really embrace that more publicly? Was there somebody or some moment that convinced you that, you know, you really wanted to demonstrate that part of your authentic self? Like, did you need to achieve a certain level professionally or a certain level of confidence personally in order to let that come out? Or I'm just curious about that evolution.
I think it was some of my friends I surrounded myself with in high school. Again, we were not popular at all, but being able to be geeks together, talk Star Wars, that translated to undergrad for me when episodes 1 and 2 started coming out and having those spaces to talk about it. But as an early professional, I think back to 24-year-old Emily as a resident director supervising RAs, I realized that they were very interested about my Disney pin collection that I had in my office at the time. And this was before pop figures were a thing. And every quarter system at Riverside. So at the end of every quarter, we would do events just for RAs to like de-stress before finals. And I remember a set of my RAs say, we just spent the past 2 hours getting beat by our boss. And she's a girl. I was like, woman, don't forget it. And yes, I'm really good at Mario Kart on the GameCube. And I realized I needed to be more open and even playful with my students, and that made it okay. And that just snowballed for me from there. Do I have friends and colleagues that tease me about being a nerd? Yes, but that doesn't change who I am because I know that it gives me these small connection points with people in my life that really matter. Yeah.
All right. Well, you fielded several questions, but as you were talking today, I felt I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. I don't know, the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life, we offer baccalaureate, which is like launches us into commencement season every May. And it's the Thursday night. It's a multi-faith service. And typically we have a student speaker who represents a particular faith background. And one particular year, that faith background happened to be the Force of
That's
Star
awesome.
Wars. And awesome. What was even greater was Mark Hamill was in the audience that year. And so
That's
we got to
great.
introduce the student speaker to Mark Hamill. So
That's amazing.
I just really love how we can bring our authentic and whole selves to this space. And that, yes, geek culture has a space here and should be celebrated here. And that's something that you've really shown us through all your works, too. So let's give it up for Emily.
Thank you so much.
And in closing, on behalf of the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life, the Dornsife School, and the University Club, we want to thank you all for being here. We will launch again in the spring semester. And I have just one token for you, Emily, something to help you reflect on what truly matters to you and why. So thanks again. See you in spring.